The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and good afternoon. I want to welcome you all to our 30-minute 2017 Chamber of the Year Process webinar. My name is Michelle Viglianti and I am the Manager of Community Advancement here at ACCE, and I'll be your main contact moving forward in the Chamber of the Year process. I'm joined today by Christy Gillenwater, who is the President and CEO of the Southwest Indiana Chamber of Commerce. Christy wears many hats here at ACCE. She's a board member, she's a Chamber of the Year committee chairwoman, and she also serves as a judge for the awards. She led 2 different chambers to victory for Chamber of the Year. She led the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce to victory in 2012, and last year she led the Southwest Indiana Chamber to victory. So she brings a ton of expertise on how to craft a winning application, and we're really glad that she's able to join us today to share her expertise with everyone. Just a few housekeeping notes just to let everyone know. You are on mute. There is a box on the corner panel of your screen where you can put questions in. If you want to put in a question at any time during the webinar, and at the end of the webinar, we'll make sure to get all those questions answered between Christy and I online for everyone, so everyone can hear the questions. Also, we have downloaded the presentation onto the side of your screen as well, so you can click it and download it directly to your computer at any time during the presentation. We'll also make sure to send a follow-up email out with the presentation attached as well. From moving forward today, I just want to hand it off to Christy real quick to give an overview and just to say hello to everyone. Thank you, Christy.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. And Happy New Year. I trust you're all doing well, advancing your communities today. But as you all know, the Chamber of the Year Award is an extremely prestigious award, and it has many layers. And so it takes a lot of time and attention from chamber leaders throughout the country who are interested in moving forward with Chamber of the Year. And this webinar is really designed to give you an overview of the entire process involved. And again, as Michelle indicated, the information we're sharing today can also be found on ACCE's website. And again, a follow-up with this presentation and the slides and hyperlinks will be provided. So first of all, I want to go through the process with you today and some of the key dates. Also going through ACCE's dynamic chamber benchmarking process, which by the way is not only a benefit for you and a must first step for Chamber of the Year, but for those of you who have not used that tool, it's really amazing for the CEO and for the top leadership staff to have that type of sharing of information and the ability to see how others in your peer group are doing in the country and how you measure up. And then we'll talk through qualification requirements as well, and then also try to give you an inside perspective on applying. Michelle?
Thank you, Christy. So with Chamber of the Year, there is several pieces in the process, and the first is qualifying. So if you're interested, you have to first be invited to apply. And in order to do that, you have to submit your data into Dynamic Chamber Benchmarking, which is ACCE's platform to input your operations information. It asks all kinds of questions related to your membership, your financial numbers, board, etc. So we need to capture that information in order to see if you qualify. Dynamic Chamber Benchmarking, it is a rolling year-long process, so you can input your data and pull reports at any time throughout the year. However, for purposes for this award, you must have your information in by March 1st. That is your first key and hard deadline. Literally at midnight on March 1st, it will cut off and we will start pulling that data and crunching numbers to see if you're eligible to apply. Important to note, you have to put in your fiscal year 2016 data. I want to quickly point out what Dynamic Chamber Benchmarking looks like for those of you who've never logged in. It's important also to know that not just your CEO has access to this. Anyone in the organization can log in and add your numbers in. The only thing that only the CEO has access to is your salary survey, which is not necessary to fill in for Chamber of the Year purposes. So dynamic chamber benchmarking can be accessed via ACCE's website. There's also a hyperlink on this presentation for you to go directly to the site. So when you log into dynamic chamber benchmarking, I just want to point out the Section 1 chamber profile and the operations survey. These two sections are what needs to be filled out 100% in order to be eligible to look at your eligibility, and that has to be filled out by March 1st. When you click on Section 1, there's two quick things I want to point out for Section 1. The first is on the upper corner, you'll see fiscal year 2016. Please make sure that that is toggled to 2016. You can actually go in and click and view different years. We want to make sure that that's at 2016 so the system pulls your correct numbers. You also want to make sure that on the bottom of your chamber profile, you answer the Chamber of the Year award question. It simply asks if you're interested or you're intending to apply for Chamber of the Year. Please make sure you hit yes. If you hit yes, it is in no way binding that you have to apply. It's just so we can pull this and know that you're interested, so we can crunch your numbers first before we crunch anyone else's and get you that information as to whether you qualify or not, so you could begin working on your application. Here is the information that we're especially going to be looking at and pulling from the data that you give us. There's 5 requirements, and you need to meet 3 out of these 5 requirements in order to be eligible to apply. It could be any 3 of the 5. 2 of them are focused on membership dollars and accounts, and the other 3 are focused on your finances, essentially positive net income, your net assets, and your current ratios. But it could be a mix of any of the 3. So once you download this presentation, you can take a look at these a little more closely. I won't go through them in detail. And just kind of get an idea of whether you think your chamber would be able to meet 3 out of the 5 criteria. We will let you know on March 6th via email and hard copy if you've qualified. If you have, then you'll be also invited to apply for Chamber of the Year, and we'll have more information such as when we're going to do a successful applications conference call, which is vaguely just a very quick ad hoc type call for anyone who wants to just call in and bounce ideas off Christy and some other winners and past winners to see what they think about applying and some tips and tricks. If you do not qualify, we'll let you know which areas you didn't hit, just so you can go back and make sure there wasn't an error in what you typed in, because that does happen once in a while, and then you're able to go back and say, oh, wait a minute, I actually typed in a 2 and I meant to type in a 4 or something like that. And then shortly after that, you will also be letting known what category you're going to be competing in. So ACCE divvies up applicants into a competition category, either category 1, 2, 3, or 4. And these categories are based on chambers of similar size and capacity. That way we can ensure that competition is, 1, fair, and that you're competing against similar chambers. We used to just use revenue as an indicator for categories, and we realized that just wasn't enough, so we added a couple others, and we do a whole formula to figure out which competition category you belong in. Last year we started a state and province category, so any chamber that applies as a state or a Canadian province will automatically be put in that category. They won't be put in the formula for the other ones. They'll just automatically go in there. Again, when you download it, if you want to take a closer look, we added in here sort of a closer breakdown of the competition categories, so you could see what if you're a category 1, what that looks like for population or a number of businesses in area. Because it's an average formula, you might look at like a category 1 in 2 of these, but in the other 3 you might be a category 2. So we'll take the average of that and kind of see where you fit, and also look at comparatively what is the group of chambers that have applied in 2017, and we'll group you that way, if that makes sense. So we'll let you know that a couple weeks after you are told whether or not you qualify. So I am going to pass it over to Christy now to talk about the interesting stuff, the actually applying and what the application looks like, and how to start thinking about that.
All right, perfect. So you'll see the application process timeline for March 1, again, as Michelle indicated, is the Dynamic Chamber benchmarking cutoff date. Then March 6th, you'll receive qualification notification. And then the week of March 13th is the application advice call. And then the 18th, applications will be due via Dropbox. So now that you've been notified, let's move forward and think that you've been notified that you qualify. The next steps in the process is actually to move forward with that application. And you'll see on your screen again those key dates we went over. And you really have 5 weeks from when you're notified that you qualify to actually submit your application. Okay, and a few days after notification, again, we'll have that conference call like we indicated. And then applications will include the following components that you'll see there on your screen. And there are short answers, answer-related questions to operations, and membership. Okay, as well as you'll see the 2 program synopses, which is really the bread and butter, which we'll get into later, of your application. And then, of course, that $250 application fee, which is waived for those of you who are Horizon investors. And as a board member, thank you very much for being a Horizon investor and helping us support additional work in our mission. So the reality of applying is something we think is very important to convey. This really does take an all-hands-on deck, and personally, in my opinion, I think it's so important that the CEO be extremely involved. I'll tell you, I have a tendency to move into obsessive-compulsive level, and when it comes to Chamber of the Year application process, oh my gosh, I am very involved and pity my poor team for working with me, but I think it's just so important for the CEO to be involved, help set that vision, help set the expectation for the quality and level of time that the team needs to spend on getting it right and being a finalist, because really the whole key of the application process is being in the finalist group. And then once you become a finalist, it's all about the interview, right? So I would always break it into those 2 categories of, okay, one, on the application, it's get to the final round, and then you have an ability, but you always have to think about that interview and how that interview at the same time at the end point can be reflected off of your application itself. Okay, so telling your story, writing the question, so important for the CEO and the leadership team to really think about the story. What do you want your story to be, particularly with those 2 program synopses? Okay, and we should all be proud of the work we're doing, and it's like I've told our community here, this is a celebration. Our winning of Chamber of the Year is a testament to what's happening in the region and our community. It's a testament to our members. It's a testament to the amazing team we formed and how dedicated. So this is really, when you think about going for this important award, it's for your community. This is for your members. It's for your team. It's, people want to be a part of a winning team. It helps you with attracting and retaining staff. It helps you with your positioning in your community. I can't underscore the importance of what winning this award or even being a finalist for this award can mean for your chamber. But it is important, again, as you think about applying, having multiple team members involved. Like, we would always have multiple team members involved in the writing. So for example, as we were applying, I'd always look at those 5 elements Michelle so articulately went through, and I'd say, okay, I think we have a really good chance that we'll qualify. So we would immediately then start thinking about what are our 2 synopses, and we always started off with a list. Like, I seem to always have a list of about 5, and then as a team we would talk about it. Okay, given the way we're asked the questions, how do we feel? Which one of these can we best articulate in the format required, but also has a compelling story as it relates to our peer group in the country. And so really thinking about those 2 synopses, and then having the subject matter experts in those areas start drafting an outline now. now of, okay, what would that look like? How would you tell the story? And similarly, as soon as you have access to the application, the same thing on the membership retention, financial performance, questions around your strategic plan. Quickly go through the application, and this could be the CEO, or if you're the one kind of tasked with leading the charge, if you're on the marketing team, writing the person's name of who you're going to have work on this. And we would always start it in a Word document, and literally it's, hey, work your magic into there. Even if an individual did it separately, it would move into this Word document so that eventually we could get to that one voice component. So since you have multiple people writing into it, you want to make sure eventually you really have one voice and one person who puts everything into kind of that one voice tone. And I think it's really important as you see the application to answer the question. It's always amazing as a judge, you see people don't answer the question. In some cases skip a question or do not directly answer a question. And so very important, answer a question, and very important to stay within the word limits. Some of the judges are very much sticklers towards word limit, and so pay attention to those word limits. Seems simple, but very important. I think it's critical to not wait until the last minute to submit. You need to think about the flow of your information. So think about, I would always tell our team, we need to have this ready to go a week in advance, because that's when, for example, with us, we moved it all from, a Word-based document to a branded document. So, the application was repurposed into a Southwest Indiana Chamber branded look and feel. So all those questions verbatim repeated, right? And then you have to think about, well, where am I putting information so that it's easy for a judge to find? So for example, if there's a question about your strategic plan and how successful you've been at implementing your strategic plan, well, then there's obviously an attachment related to, here's a copy of our strategic plan. So where do you put that strategic plan, and how do you embed that in what you're uploading to Dropbox? I mean, there's a lot of time intensity in the, moving all your content over to your branded document and then making sure that all those links, etc., work and are in the appropriate spots. And in some cases, certain documents are asked for multiple times. So, making sure they're in the proper location so that a judge doesn't think, well, they didn't include this information. Okay, so additional things to think about. Cannot reemphasize the don't wait till the last minute to submit. Again, the amount of time that's needed to design and kind of pull this together at the end is significant. And I think making sure your marketing team, your communications team, whoever's going to be your key drafters and crafters of this document, that basically those last 2 weeks of their job are pretty much the last 2 weeks before the application's due. It's pretty much 100% Chamber of the Year. So trying to make sure in their workflow that anything else, deadlines that are needed, are worked out, ahead of time. And I think it's important also, again, as you think about that nationally relevant synopsis for your size organization, start doing some research now about other programs. What did the winners last year do, the year before that? What kinds of things did they write about? How did they frame their message? And then, organize your overall application exactly as the application is organized. Some try to change it up. I mean, it's one thing to brand the document, it's another thing to change up the order or reflow it. That is very confusing for judges. So think as a judge, and making it as easy as you can, and label each component as it's labeled in the application. And again, answers and responses should be very easy to find. And I also do think it isn't a bad thing, as you're in kind of those final weeks of the application process, starting to think about, hey, if you are named a finalist, who would you ask to go with you? And there are different schools of thought on that. The CEO obviously is a natural, but who would be that person with the CEO? Is it a board member? Is it a key staff member? And thinking about kind of the flow of the two of you and how you work together. Very, very important. What you can do now, again, as we talked about, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the application process, the judging. Just so you understand the judging and who they're comprised of. The judges are comprised of Chamber of the Year award winners in the past. They're comprised of board members, veteran chamber CEOs, people with a great deal of depth and breadth of knowledge of our amazing industry. And so one of the things you need to think about as you're filling out your application is 1/3 of your score really is pulled from the short answers, the collateral documents you share, your financial documents, but 2/3 of the score is on those the program synopsis. So again, the importance of starting to really look into that now and getting ahead on the program. I mean, at this point right now, last year, we were thinking about what those were, and we were outlining our 2 top priorities. And we actually went with the 2 top because as we started outlining them, we collectively thought, okay, this is our best way to tell our story. And again, you'll see those key dates there on the screen. June 12th, the finalists are announced. The 16th, so you literally have 1 month from when you're announced to your interviews at convention prior to the conference really kicking off there. And then July 18th, the winners announced at the conference awards banquet. And again, importance, the critical importance, I can't reiterate enough, start thinking about it now because 5 weeks, those 5 weeks will fly by. So the more you do, work ahead of time, start talking with past winners, board members, your team, staff, start to assess whether you think this is your year to do it. You really need to have, a fantastic, 12, 18 months prior where you feel, okay, this is our year to really shine and to go for this because the story we have to tell is so impressive. And thinking again not only about the application process but that interview process and start thinking about the sample synopses again. Look at those from past winners. Start inputting your stuff now into chamber, the dynamic chamber benchmarking, and just don't put it off. Don't put this off. And I have to tell you, I mean, we would even, for example, once we got through the application process, as soon as we were through the application process, I started working on the interview. And the key messages that we wanted to make sure, should we be announced as a finalist, that these are the messages we want conveyed. So I went through our application and I pulled out key phrases, key messages, little things that I wanted to make sure that no matter what the question is the judges asked, these key messages were conveyed in that interview. We even did mock interviews. Literally, I mean, I chose my incoming board chair, and he laughed at me. But I literally practiced with walking into the interview room. We had team members and 1 or 2 outsiders there. We, shook hands, sat down, and they interviewed us. I mean, it literally went to that level of, preparation and they just bolted us with a bunch of questions, and we practiced, flow. We practiced timing and again, it just takes a significant amount of time preparing, thinking about it, not only the application process, but the interview process. And I think as a team, as you look at, your business plan for the year, your strategic plan, making sure that all the key players involved have the adequate time carved out to work not only on the application, but also on the interview process. So hopefully this is pretty clear from what Michelle and I shared with you today. As you all know, this is a gift to be in this amazing industry, and this is a wonderful opportunity for you to shine and tell your story, so don't be shy. And we hope that you strongly consider applying for Chamber of the Year because we want to be able to help tell your story. At this point, we are open to questions, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Christy. We actually had about 2 or 3 questions asking pretty much the same thing, and it's talking about the synopses and how you chose which synopses to go with. what do the judges look for when looking at these synopses, and are there certain types of programs that the applicants should lean towards in choosing, and how did you choose? Which ones?
Good question. So we chose, in fact, we're going to be featured in 2 weeks on our Chamber of the Year. Our first synopsis was downtown, our Downtown Alliance. And while some chambers are involved with managing the leadership and the economic vision for their downtowns, we thought the way in which we had conducted our work was unique. And in fact, it had been owned by a different organization when I moved to this chamber 4 years ago, and just the whole storyline of how we ended up kind of owning that space, how our downtown was absolutely sleepy. No one was even paying attention to the downtown. No one woke up every day thinking about downtown. And as we all know, the core of our regions, the core of our communities really are our downtowns, and the perspective and the permanent position they have with respect to creating quality of place cannot be overemphasized enough. And so the manner, the collaborations we pulled together, the impact, I mean, we're at over $550 million underway in investment, either now or over the next 5 years, planned investment now, and as of last year, I think it was $250 million. So just in 2 years, the kinds of things that we had accomplished. And really, it's with the synopsis, it's kind of a 2-year time frame. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Michelle, but I think we look at kind of a 2-year time frame on those. And so just in our 2.5 years of infancy there, what we had accomplished, that made that a real clear winner for us. Again, and some of the points to think about are obviously economic impact. They are collaborations. Think about the Horizon document and how, think about the Horizon document and what you've been doing related to that document that is leading edge. Our second, in our case, our second synopsis was basically our public policy efforts. And you go, okay, well, everyone does public policy, or maybe even if you're a smaller chamber, you may not. But for the most part, a lot of chambers are involved in policy work. So why is that innovative or unique? Well, again, with us, it was our outcomes and how we accomplished our outcomes and the depth and breadth of state financial support we brought to this region that had never been tapped into or realized before in just a 2-year process. And so again, we kind of went with those themes of collaboration, economic impact. There was a lot of tie-in to our downtown, a very transformational project for our region, and we think really a model for the country on one of the projects that we were able to seek state support for that was at a 0 budget line item when our session started, and at the end it was $25.2 million that year. And so we really, while again not earth-shattering to be involved in public policy, it was the way in which we went about it and our outcomes. So again, look at the Horizon report. Think about what's trending in our industry or what's different or unique. Think about maybe exterior partnerships that you've created. Think about things that the chamber has done in your community that has left a lasting impression in the community. Those types of projects. That's what we want to see.
Thank you, Christy. And I'm also going to add to this because as you were talking, we had a couple follow-up questions that relate to this about the sort of what year to focus on. So as you said, Christy, you sort of want to focus on like a 2-year period. You need to make sure that the synopses you choose, you can say that had some sort of significant progress in 2016. So you could choose a program that your chamber has been going on for a while. It doesn't have to be a program that was launched, evaluated, and ended in 1 year. We know that never works out that way. But if you can at least show in your synopsis and your narrative that you did something significant in 2016 that applied to that program, then you can certainly go ahead and we encourage you to use it. but the likelihood that you're going to have something that started and ended perfectly in 2016, we understand that's almost never. In terms of the short answer questions, we had a question regarding whether those also have to refer to the last full year, 2016. Same sort of thing, focusing on 2016, but again, if you started something in 2015 that sort of bled into 2016 and you made a lot of progress that year, you can talk about that as well. For example, some of the questions, short answer questions, surround your strategic plan. You probably don't have a plan that started in 2016, so you would have to then talk about previous years, but also bring up what you did this past year that somehow helped it out. Christy, do you have anything to add about that?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Another question that we have is who attends, in terms of interview attendees, is who attends the interview, and do you get to choose, or do the judges tell you who they want to interview? And I can quickly answer that one. You choose, there's two people that go into the interview. The chamber CEO should be one, and then it's up to your chamber who that second person is. I know Christy had the chairman of her board. Other times it's been another VP from the chamber. Sometimes it's been a board member. Sometimes it's been their director of public policy. It's the person you choose should be someone that you have good rapport with and who has working knowledge of a lot of facets, almost all of the facets of your chamber, to be able to answer any question that's thrown at them. Christy, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I can just emphasize, and it's so important to choose someone that you gel well with, and that the flow of answers will be natural between the two of you. So someone that is not only obviously a dynamic interviewer, and just as soon as they walk in the room, they're captivating to the judges. I think that's really important. And to Michelle's point, obviously a lot of working knowledge about the chamber as well. But I think the dynamic between you and that individual will really be key. And I think it's important to kind of outline, hey, if it's this type of question, and this is what I've always done, if it's this type of question, I'll handle it. If it's that type of question, you handle it. For example, if it's operational or financial or strategic plan, I'll handle it. If it's engagement in the community, how do we engage our volunteers, membership related, you handle it. And what we would always do is whoever would handle it, quote unquote, would actually take the lead on that question. And then we'd always try to time it so that there was enough time for that second person to chime in. So if there was something that was left off, etc. And the interview takes, if I remember correctly, Michelle, it's about 45 minutes, and it's, yes, the onus is on you to make sure that the time you manage your responses well, so that all of the questions are answered, because I think judges obviously look at that if you didn't even have a chance to make it through all of the questions that were asked.
Yes. Exactly.
So that should be asked.
Thank you, Christy. We're about 3 minutes past time. If we're okay, we're going to continue just quickly. There's a couple more questions we just want to get through, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we know we're running a little over. So if you need to drop off, we'll be following up with the presentation shortly after this webinar is over. Christy, are you okay to stay on the line for another couple minutes or so?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So we have another question referring to, is it better to have a lot of samples, or should we try to streamline those, so samples and attachments? We don't want to overwhelm the judges, but we do want to provide as much backup information as possible. So how is best to do that? And I'm glad this question was answered, because application organization is a big deal. Christy probably won't want to sort of toot her own horn, but her application, a couple of the judges mentioned, was probably the nicest, prettiest to look at, and also best organized application they've ever seen. So hers would be a great one, and the sample synopses are up online for you to see, but hers would be a great one for you to sort of look at and see how hers is modeled. But Christy, do you want to talk a little bit about organization?
Sure. I would say a couple things on this. One, if it asks for 2 examples, only give 2. Now, in your synopses, there's a real opportunity to add in more. I will also say that there is an opportunity in the questions, and when you're limited on space, to work in some infographics that are relevant. So we were really thoughtful about what infographics we chose, where we placed those, and how they tell a compelling story and in a short, succinct way. So in some cases we chose, well, instead of attaching that, we're going to embed that infographic here because it's relevant to this answer. So hopefully that makes some sense. And then as it relates to attachments, in particular, when it comes to your synopses, again, more of an opportunity to add in additional. I mean, I don't think for any of them you want to add in 10, for example, to one synopsis. But if there's a way to, in some cases, embed a couple attachments together into one where it makes sense, that helps, so it's less moving around for the judge, but also thinking about where you place it so that, for example, at the end of your first synopsis, then, hey, here are 10, attachments. Well, instead, do you kind of work, okay, here's the first part, here's the program evaluation part, and then here's my relevant attachment to that of, yes, this is how we evaluated the program, and this is a year-end report that we shared with shareholders on it. You know what I mean? So thinking about where those attachments are located and your best ones. I mean, again, we always go for, graphic design as well. So we didn't want to share anything that we weren't proud of graphically. So that was one of our ways to delete off the list. Obviously, content and impact was another thing. And then again, third, we looked at, in some cases, instead of attaching it, could it be synthesized into an interesting infographic? That's how I would.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And I'll add to that too that the most organized and easiest for the judges to go through applications are one where the Chamber has really utilized a lot of what Adobe can do in terms of linking within a document or linking within a folder that's attached to your document. So just start thinking of ways to do that. You could also, of course, put C attachment, XYZ, but just make sure that they're in properly labeled folders. That's very important. The other thing to note is that for the submissions, we do not accept anything printed. We don't accept any hard copies. It's all electronic and it's all submitted through Dropbox. It should be one main folder that you submit with that's your chamber name, and then within that, all the sections broken out. And you could simply, Dropbox is really easy to use. There's a submission guidelines on our website that I'll send in a follow-up email, but you'll basically just share your application with me via Dropbox. And that's how you submit. It's very easy, and I'll send you a note back saying that we received it within 24 hours. But it is important to note that we won't accept anything that's hard copy. Another question we have is, if you apply for Chamber of the Year, can you apply to other ACCE award programs that we have going on? And the answer is absolutely yes. You could apply to ACE Awards for Communication Excellence. You could apply for a Regional Innovation Award. That's separate. You would just have to fill out separate forms, and they all have separate and different sort of submission policies surrounding that. But you can apply to more than one ACCE award. Then we also have another question. Can it be a program that's just been in operation for a long time, not something that, or not just something new? And yes, it can be something for the synopses. You can choose a program that's been happening for a couple of years, but like I said, you just need to make sure that you can show the judges that you've made significant progress in 2016. Whether that's you added a significant part of that, whether you've expanded it somehow, but I wouldn't use a program that you started in 2010 that hasn't had any change in it since 2010, if that makes sense. Another question we have is, can we link to online items like websites, news articles, etc.? Yes, you can. we've had it happen before. Just make sure that whatever you're linking to the link won't be broken or it won't be taken offline. There have been times where someone has linked to a news article and then the online newspaper took that link down or changed it, and then it was expired. Your best bet sometimes is to take screenshots and put it in a PDF and link to that PDF just to ensure that it won't be expired at some point. But you can link to outside sources. And then I think that's all the questions that we have. And then if there's any others that come up that we didn't get to or you think of throughout the next couple days or after this webinar, please feel free to shoot me a call or give me an email. I'm happy to answer anything. A lot of people will wind up just calling and asking about their different programs and which ones we think might be best, or just bouncing ideas off of me. So please feel free to utilize the ACCE staff, and there are a bunch of past winners that are happy to also talk with you if you want more information and are interested. So other than that, Christy, do you have any last comments?
No, outside of just thank you so much for your interest. I highly encourage all of you to apply this year and to tell your amazing story and share it with the judges. Thank you for your interest and for being on the call today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. And this will be, we'll follow up after with an email. So thank you all.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye.